Okay, it's time to do yet another observation episode. My name is Phil, and you're listening to The Lit. Observation number 5. There have been quite a few things that I've looked at and just seen people doing things that are just sort of, well, normal to them, I guess. But as I looked at them, I dissected what was actually going on in the situation. I noticed certain things, and you could tell certain stuff about people by just observing them. Much like many people who go out and wear the binoculars and watch birds and see how they react and how they do things in the wild. People are the same way. You can just simply observe them and you can tell certain things, how they react, how they do things. It's really quite fascinating. And, well, this is the 5th time that I'm going to bring my observations to light. I hope that at the end of the episode, you'll kind of agree with some of the things that I have noticed and observed, and maybe, just maybe, based on your everyday life walking around here and there, you might have actually observed some of these things that I've noticed. And even if you haven't, I'm certain that there are some things that you have observed, and you just sort of put in the back of your mind. My advice to you is to sort of think about it for just a minute and sort of analyze exactly what it is that's going on. It might help you understand the people that are around you a little bit better. Because, I mean, really, just like I do a show called What Are We Doing? Well, after doing those shows, I discovered that maybe it's a good idea to just sort of sit back and just observe and see what's happening. And just maybe, I personally may be able to understand what we're doing. But I can't make any promises. And I can certainly say that my personal observations will probably be a little different than yours. And maybe after I enlighten rather, you on what I've seen, maybe you'll pick up on it as well. Good grief. I'm pretty excited knowing that this episode is going to be coming out on Saturday. This Saturday, actually. Yes, this Saturday. January 17th, 2026. As I record right now, it's actually January 15th. I believe that's Martin Luther King's birthday. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A great man who had a vision of what he thought America could be for everybody, not just minorities, but everybody. Noticing the things that are going on today, considering where the country was in general when he had his vision and was taking his action, you can definitely see that steps were made in the right direction. They may not all be all the way there, but certainly the compass is pointing north. We just have to continue making it go in that direction. But as well, I think that all we have to do is just sort of realize that we are all human at the end of the day. Not much more I can say about that. I mean, really, we are all human at the end of the day. And eventually, one day we'll figure it out. Now, this is where I would put in the fill in the blanks, but I've got something a little better this time. Turns out that I always talk about Patrick Houston, a guy who does Houston's Hustle Hobbies on Facebook and Instagram, but he is a guy that I've interviewed before and I plan to interview again on the show. And he's a tremendous entrepreneur. And it just so happens that I'm going to do something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I love this part. Turns out that he is and has been, if you haven't already heard me talk about it before, the owner and proprietor of Zenith Transport LLC. He's been serving Bucks County and Philadelphia County since 2020, using his smooth electric vehicles in order to get people and their merchandise where they need to go. To make a long story short, Zenith Transport will absolutely get you to trains, planes, using his electric automobiles. See how I did that? Turns out that he will shuttle you to work, school, or hospitals, and more interestingly than not, he actually will allow you to, he will take you to jail visits. Now, as a former CO, I can certainly tell you that many of the inmates that I was around were from areas that weren't necessarily close to where their families are, and there was a definite problem that some of them had getting visits. Now, if you were in that situation, turns out that Patrick Houston's Zenith Transport LLC might be able to help you out. He also delivers parcels, and he can help you move up to a 2-bedroom apartment if need be. Zenith LLC is, well, the Zenith Transport LLC is committed to providing eco-friendly transportation solution to their clients. Zenith Transport is dedicated to reducing their carbon footprint while offering top-notch transportation service. Let Zenith Transport take you on a ride towards a sustainable future. Find Zenith Transport LLC on Instagram, click the link, and book your spot and have your transportation needs filled. That is in place of fill in the blank. My guy, Patrick Houston, is an absolute great businessman. He has fair prices on all of his ventures that he's doing, and I'm telling you, Zenith Transport LLC, for those who live in the Bucks County and Philadelphia County area, will in fact be an asset to you for certain. And on that note, it's time for the main event. Oh boy. Let's start talking about those observations that I have noticed. First one I want to talk about is the fact that you can kind of tell when people are followers. Where am I going with that? Well, a couple weeks ago, going to Walmart, I happened to see 3 people who were going into the store as I was going out. Now, normally I wouldn't really pay attention to it very much, except for the fact that I was observing their movement, and their movement was very interesting. Like I said, there were three of them. And Walmart has those automatic doors that will open no matter which side you go on. And they have two sides, one that specifically says exit and one that specifically says entrance. Now, it turns out that of this group of three people, one of the people went to the entrance door. The other one went off to the exit side, which of course is not the side that you're supposed to go on in order to keep the flow of traffic moving, correct? But the third person is the one that I zeroed in on. That third person had a choice. And that choice was very simple. These other two had decided, okay, I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go that way. And that third person had to choose which direction that they were going to go in. Gotta love Dr. Pepper. And this person decided to go in the exit side. Now, why do I think that this person is the follower? Simply put, the other two had made up their mind, and they were directly going into one side or the other. That third person had a choice in which they were going to take. And specifically, that person decided to go and follow the person who went through the exit door. Clearly, amongst the group, perhaps the person who went to the entrance door was just a part of the group that just said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm sort of an outlier. I'm going to do whatever I want. The person who went through the exit door said, hey, I am making the decision to go through the exit door. And that is why I'm sure that the third person, who was directly behind the person who went through the exit door, is a follower. Because that person, without hesitation, went right through the exit door with the second person. Wasn't a thought to go through the other door. They just went straight to the exit. Didn't even bother looking at where they were. They just chose to follow what I'm going to assume is the leader of the group. Now, that's something that I find very, very interesting, because from my perspective, I wouldn't necessarily want to do that, because I don't necessarily follow the trends or most of what other people do. I typically consider the options: exit door, entrance door. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show, actually, because I had a very interesting encounter with the exit and entrance door at Walmart myself. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, what made that person decide to go in that direction? Like I said, clearly they are a follower. And the person who went through the exit door first is the person who's a leader. Now, the thought would be like, well, that person could have just as easily gone into the entrance door as well. Yeah, they could have, but they chose their own path. And their own path was to go through the exit door. And the person behind them emulated them, followed their lead, and went that way, as opposed to going in the entrance door where the other person had gone, somebody who may not be, as they say, they may not be a leader. That person may just be just sort of doing their own thing, like I said. And I thought that was a rather interesting thing to notice. Or more so, maybe it was more interesting the fact that I decided to really pay attention to that. Because normally I wouldn't even have given it a second thought, except for the fact that it just jumped out at me to make me think, hey, there's probably something to this. If you really pay attention to how people move, you can probably easily discover which one is the leader and which one is the follower. And I think that's just really kind of neat. Speaking of neat occurrences, if my 49ers were to get to and win the Super Bowl this year, they will be doing so as a home game, and it will have been Super Bowl 60. The 49ers would then join the New England Patriots and the Pittsburgh Steelers as the three teams who have won the most Super Bowls at 6. The most interesting part about that is the Steelers and the Patriots right now. The Steelers don't have a chance to do it. The Patriots do have a chance to get to a 7th Super Bowl. But that's not really the point. The fact that Super Bowl 60 is coming up and each of those two teams have won 6 Super Bowls means that as of now, those two teams have won a total of 1/5 of all Super Bowls that have been played once Super Bowl 60 comes up, regardless of if the Patriots get into it. Now, of course, if they win, they're going to change that math a little bit. But now, knowing that it's Super Bowl 60 coming up, subtract 30. Super Bowl 30. At that time, the Dallas Cowboys won their 5th Super Bowl. And in 94, the 49ers had won their 5th Super Bowl. And, of course, when the Cowboys had won Super Bowl 30, that meant that the 49ers and the Cowboys, with their total of 10 Super Bowls between the two of them, had actually won a third of all Super Bowls. A third. I thought about that and I was like, that's just a huge chunk. Now, when I was in high school and that was going on, it just didn't dawn on me. It really didn't. But now looking back, it's really astonishing that two teams would have actually won together between the two of them 1/3 of all championships that were in the Super Bowl. A third of them. It's ridiculous. Nobody had gotten to that point. No two teams had won that many. I mean, it's just insane to think that they had won that many. Now, at the time, when the 49ers had won and the Cowboys had won their 5th Super Bowls in 94, 95, making it the fact that they had won a third of all Super Bowls played, the Steelers were still in that group a little bit because they had actually won 4 in the 70s. So they were not far behind. But it's very interesting to think, though, that the 49ers and the Cowboys combined for 10. That left only 20 Super Bowls. 20. And then the Steelers won 4 of those. So that's only 16 Super Bowls. And out of that, there was only a few teams that actually were able to do so and win the Super Bowl. And now that there's 60 of them, and a few more teams that hadn't won the Super Bowl have now gotten some Super Bowl wins. The Eagles with their 2, and the Saints with their 1, a couple teams that have dotted in and out and won a Super Bowl. The Ravens picked up a couple. It's really interesting that like I said, the Patriots and the Steelers combined for a fifth of all Super Bowls, with their combined 12. Now, thinking about that math, this is the observation that I made. How interesting would it actually be if some team or teams would have been good enough throughout all that time to have pulled off a third of Super Bowls out of 60? I mean, a third? That's 20. If two teams had pulled off 20, and you look at it from the perspective with the Steelers and the Patriots, I mean, they're 12 combined. And then the 49ers and the Cowboys, they have another 10. That is a little more than a third of all Super Bowls. 4 teams out of 32 won a little more than a third of all Super Bowls. That's really amazing. And no matter what you may think of the Patriots, no matter what you might think of the Steelers, clearly there's a lot of people who don't think very much of the Cowboys. And then, of course, the 49ers. You have to consider that in those times when they were doing their damage in the Super Bowl, those teams were well run and did everything you could possibly do right, because how else could they have gotten that many Super Bowls? That takes ownership that makes good decisions, general managers who get great players, coaches who utilize those players, and players who don't back away from the challenges. It literally is a perfect storm in order for those teams to have won all those titles individually. And they all won their titles in bunches. Like I said, the Steelers, they had their first 4 in the 70s. The 49ers, they won 4 of theirs in the 80s, got 1 in the 90s. The Cowboys split pretty much the 70s and the 90s to get their 5. And the Patriots, the Steelers, they came up in the 2000s, and the Patriots, boy, they did the same thing and got all of their Super Bowl wins within the 2000s era. Good people, good decisions, good play, and that's what you get. Just a crazy observation that a small amount of teams have won a huge percentage of the championships. It's just really amazing to me. It really is. Now, there's a quote from one of my favorite movies, The Da Vinci Code, released in 2006. It was made by, sorry, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Of all the things that I should have written down in my notes, that would have been something. Oh, man. I need to know what his name is. Give me a second. I gotta find out his name because he's a good guy and I need him for this. Ian McKellen, the actor who played Magneto in the original X-Men movies, Ian McKellen. In the Da Vinci Code, he got to say one of the coolest lines that I have ever heard. And as a result of that line, well, there's a lot of logic that comes with it. The line is, people rarely notice things right in front of their eyes. People rarely notice things that happen right in front of their eyes. People rarely notice things right in front of their eyes. So magic works so well because stuff is happening right in front of you, but there's a little sleight of hand and you get distracted, and all of a sudden the stuff that's right there, that's plain as day, you completely miss. And as a result of that, there are things that I've seen and that I've understood and noticed that just don't get picked up on. And some of them are really kind of crazy. And one of them here is a teacher at my kid's school. I'm going to go. You're in that classroom and you don't necessarily see everything that's going on. Now, granted, corrections officers have a larger number of people that they have to deal with. But what you have to do is sort of have like a tunnel vision. You don't necessarily see everything, but you are aware of where everything is at and what's going on. It's really, I call it the 1,000-mile stare. I never understood it when I first started, and it was really something that kind of freaked me out, to be honest with you. I didn't know what was going on, and then after working at the jail, the prison, for a while, I discovered that I was doing it now too, where you could literally be talking to somebody directly in front of you, and yet you're listening to every detail of what they're saying, but your eyes are now doing something totally different. Your ears are listening to what's being said to you, but your eyes are surveying everything that's around you so that you're still aware of what's going on. Now, a lot of times people aren't going to have that awareness, and because of that, stuff just goes past them. And one of the things that I discovered that went past a lot of people, and of course, this is right in that same period of time that, of course, I was a corrections officer, so this didn't get past me because I'm always looking at things. Even to this day, I'm still looking around and paying attention to stuff that most people don't. Entrances, exits, what people are doing, what they're wearing sometimes is something that pops in my mind, even though the only thing that I used to have to worry about was people who wore brown. But in general, I kind of keep my eyes on that sort of stuff. But it turns out that I was, again, Walmart. That's just a wonderful place where a lot of stuff seems to happen. Maybe I should stop going to Walmart. But if I did that, I would never be able to do this show. I'll have to thank the good people at Walmart for keeping me full of ideas. Well, I was in the store and I was at the checkout, regular checkout. And I don't remember if I told this story, but boy, this is something that I observed. But most of the other people around me, they were clueless about it, including the security guard. And I'm glad that I noticed it, but other people didn't, because if the wrong person had noticed, what I saw, it could have started something, and fortunately, I used my judgment and was discreet in the situation in order to really not make not light of it, but make a scene of it. Well, the person that was in front of me, the guy was sitting up there and he had his t-shirt on and just had a pair of jeans, and of course my eyes are always scanning around everywhere. And I noticed that his shirt lifted up and you could clearly see the gun sitting out. Not in a holster, but just in his waistband, in the back. And I was like, I see this. And I started looking around, security guard, he didn't notice it. And I did one of those things where, psst, 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 psst. And he looked back at me, and I just simply took my hand and I just pushed down on my shirt. And then he looked at it and he goes, "Oh, thanks." And he covered it up, tucked it in. And nobody was the wiser except for me and him. Nobody saw the gun. But for some reason, it was, for me, like I said, because I'm aware of these things, it was clear as day. And there was, in the store, several hundred people, I imagine. In the area where we were at least 20. And not one of them noticed it, including a security guard. People rarely notice things right in front of their eyes. That's what it comes down to. Another situation that happened at Walmart. Walmart. Boy, I don't know about Walmart, but I knew about Walmart. I was going into Walmart this time. I may or may not have told this story. I think I did, but it goes to the fact that, well, people just don't notice things that are right in front of their face. I'm about to go into Walmart, and my mother is with me, and we're walking into the entrance door, and I noticed immediately that there was a guy standing there, and he had a whole mop and bucket, and I saw the door open because he was getting close to it, and you could see that somebody had spilled what I would say was somewhere between a 32 and a 44 ounce red icy all over the floor. And the guy was cleaning it up. And it was directly in front of the entrance door. Now, my initial thought was, well, I'm definitely not going to go in that door for multiple reasons. Reason number one, I didn't want to fall. Why would I want to take the chance of going through there and stepping in the icy and falling? As well, didn't want my mother to fall in the icy that was sitting in there. So made sure she followed me. And then there's the simple respect factor that this gentleman was trying to clean this mess up. And if people would have continued to walk through the entrance door, what would have happened is people would have been in his way and it would have taken him longer to clean it up. And worst case scenario, somebody, even if they don't fall, would step in it and start tracking it throughout farther through the store, and then he would have to clean up a bigger area. It's just common courtesy and common sense to not want to do that. So I decided to go through the exit door. Told you I'd get back around to it. And when I'm doing that, this lady, and I'm going to assume, but I'm not going to make that assumption too much. There was a gentleman with her. One could imagine that it was probably her husband. And as I was walking through the exit door, they were walking past the guy who was cleaning up the mess no more than 10 feet to their right. And the lady looks at me and she says, "It's the wrong door," or something thereabout. It's been a few months now, so, and I really didn't value this woman's thoughts at all at this point. She said that, and I replied back to her very quickly without hesitation, "I'm not stupid." Turns out that she clearly didn't notice that the guy was 10 feet to her left cleaning up this pretty big spill. And she felt the need to comment to me, the person who actually was aware of the situation. Now, like I said, the guy who was with her, who I'm assuming was her husband, then after hearing her say what she said, and then me saying what I said, looked over to his left and saw the spill. Now, some people would be like, well, if that was his wife, maybe he's going to defend what she had to say. But he looked and he saw that there was the guy cleaning up the spill, and realized right away that if he had said anything, even in her defense, it would make him look just as stupid as she was. And so he just kept his mouth shut, shook his head, and kept on going with it. Perfect example of somebody who clearly wasn't paying any attention to the things that were in front of them. I don't know. I can certainly say that I've always tried to be relatively self-aware and have an idea of the things that are going on around me. The whole saying, read the room, I always try to do that. Even before I became a corrections officer, it was just something that I kind of did. And it's weird that a Robert De Niro movie made me think of that. It was Ronin. It's one of my favorite movies. I do have a top 5 movies. Ronin is among those movies where Robert De Niro is an agent of the United States and he's on an assignment. But during that movie, in the very beginning, one of the things he does is he has to meet up with people because he's going to do an assignment for them. And they go to a bar. And while he's going to the bar, he realizes this is the place that he's supposed to be at. And the first thing he does is he looks at the place, looks left, looks right, then he walks past it. After he walks past it, he goes down an alley and he finds the back of the bar. Then he goes back around to the front, goes inside, speaks to the bartender in French, asks him where the bathroom is. He then goes to the bathroom, goes past it, goes back to the door that he found from the outside. Now he's inside. He unlocks the door. He takes his gun and he puts it behind the bar. Not behind the bar, he puts it behind the bar. Because he already got himself a situation where he knows he can now go get that weapon if he needs it. Goes back in. They're all called out. And they get ready to go into a van. And he's looking around. And he's asked, "What were you doing around the back?" Somebody noticed him. And Robert De Niro says the line that I started really paying attention to and utilizing myself. He said, "I never go into a place that I don't know how to get out." That stuck so bad and so much to me that pretty much any time I go to a restaurant, one of the first things I do is I go to the bathroom, because usually when you go to the bathroom in a restaurant, you can look around the entire place, you can see the exits, so there is a way you can figure out how to get out of the place in case something goes awry. Again, that's me paying attention to things that are around, noticing what's going on. But that's just the way I do things. And I can certainly say not everybody thinks like that. Clearly, they don't. Now, I believe I'm going to ring the bell and call the main event over. It's really terrible. I'm gonna have to stop doing that come February. I've been weaning myself off of Dr. Pepper for the last couple of months now, since I've been going back to the gym. Been drinking less and less and less and less. Eventually it's gonna have to turn it on. But now, I do believe that I want to start with the Spear of the Week. The Spear of the Week can only be one thing. It can only be the injury bug that has plagued the 49ers this entire season. Yes, they got past the Eagles. Kind of expected it. The Eagles seemed a little stale. And for some reason, the 49ers just weren't going to die. However, George Kittle, probably the best pure tight end. I don't care what they say about Kelsey. He doesn't block. Kittle does. And blocks like a madman. The best tight end. Pure tight end in every aspect. Got injured by having his Achilles torn in Philadelphia. So, of course, he will not be available to play against the Seahawks. And worse still, if you ask the NBA's Tyrese Halliburton, or, I don't know why I can't think of the guy's name, from Boston, who tore their Achilles during the playoffs, how much fun they're having this basketball season. The answer is zero, because they tore their Achilles in the playoffs, meaning there was literally no chance for them to come back for this regular season, the 2025-2026 season. It was lost to them. And in truth, because Kittle tore his Achilles in the wild card round of the playoffs, there's next to no chance that he's going to be available to play next year. Like, the injury is literally going to have him out pretty much all the 2026 season. That's just the breaks. So, once again, I say the injury bug is, in fact, what I want to spear this week. Now, back to the playoff picks. I'm going to pat myself on the back and say I had a very good, if not almost great, regular season. My final tally of the regular season for the picks that I made was 52-38. Kind of went a little south last week of the season when teams decided to bench some players. But all in all, it's not bad. It's really not. Last year, the grand total was 58-44. Wasn't bad. But these playoffs this year, it was impossible to call it. It really was. And I don't expect it to be any easier the rest of the way, because I felt that all 14 teams in the playoffs this year, you could literally take all the teams that are in the AFC and all the teams in the NFC, put their names in a bag, and just pick one from the AFC and pick one from the NFC, and that's going to be the teams that are playing in the Super Bowl. I swore up and down that there would be no way that I would put even a penny on any of the results of any of these playoff games, because these teams are, in my opinion, so close in a lot of ways that it's really, really difficult to even imagine that you could guess right on who's going to win. And truly, I did very poor. 6 playoff games, I got only 2 of them right. And realistically, I'm surprised I got that many right. But at the same time, the fact that I got 2 right means that realistically, I was just as likely to have gotten 4 right and gotten 2 wrong, because that's just how volatile these playoffs were. And considering that 1, 2, 3, 4 of my picks were pretty much decided in the fourth quarter. And it could just as easily have gone the other way. They really could have. Let's start with the first one I got wrong. I said the Rams were going to... Wait a minute. I didn't get that one wrong. I gave myself credit for what I... No. I got that one right. That's a win. Really? I did better than I thought I did. How about that? You got to be kidding me. Marked it wrong, but I was absolutely right. I did better than I thought I did. I'm not 2-4. I'm actually 3-3. Indeed, I'm 3-3. And it's really kind of funny. I got the AFC completely wrong, and I got the NFC completely right. I got the AFC completely wrong and the NFC completely right. That's how I did this. How about that? Just looked at it wrong, and I called it a loss because I expected that it was. Well, let's just say the AFC, what I got wrong. I said Steelers over Texans 20-17, close game. Nah. Wrong. That game was so close in the fourth quarter before the Texans lost their mind and Father Time grabbed Aaron Rodgers and said, "Hey, old man, you can't do this." And the score ended up being 30-6, and it definitely should not have been that way. As many fumbles as what I like to call the babyface kid, C.J. Stroud, had to that old master, he should have been able to figure it out, but they just couldn't, and he looked like he was 1,000 years old, and C.J. Stroud looked like he was 12. All the mistakes and the bright lights were on him, and yet he still pulled it off. Texans won 30-6. What? I had some faith in Jim Harbaugh, and that faith was misplaced. I liked him to win 28-20 against the Patriots. I expected a little bit of an upset there. If anything, I got upset when I saw the Patriots had 16-3. What? They could only muster 16 points, but it was enough because the Chargers couldn't get more than 3. What? 16-3. Patriots won. That's a L for me. Now, I was going with a hot hand, but unfortunately, it turned out those guys from that frozen, crazy, snowy, icy environment in Buffalo went down there and they took the Jaguars and just said, no. No. I expected it to be an interesting game and kind of fun. I was going Jacksonville was going to win their playoff game and move on 30-20. And, well, didn't quite go the way I thought it would. Nope. There was 51 points scored when I expected 50, but they weren't quite allotted in the same way that I thought they were going to be. No. The Texans, not the Texans, the Bills pulled off something fierce. And they won that game because Trevor Lawrence just lost it at the end. An interception he'll never forget. I guarantee you, in a year or two, Jacksonville is going to advance in the playoffs, but it just wasn't their time. 27-24, Jaguars lose, Bills win, I lose. But now, like I said, I don't know how I did it. I messed up. I called this one a loss, but it was really a win. I said Rams were going to win 24-20. And they won 34-31. Close game, closer than it should have been. And of course, that makes me feel kind of good. That just tells me that just maybe the Rams are a little more vulnerable than they think they are. But I got the win there. Speaking of win, I said the Bears were going to win a close one against the Packers. I was going real close, 21-20, but of course, it was still close enough. 4 points is enough to make you a little nervous. Packers only got 27. Bears, they got 31. That's a win for me. I kind of thought that was happening. And then, of course, the one that I would be an absolute terrible fan if I wasn't faithful. 49ers faithful. And actually pick them to beat the Eagles. And I did. And I wasn't very far off from the score. I said 24-21, 49ers were going to come here to Philadelphia and win. And, well, 24-19, or rather 23-19, they did come here and they did win. 49ers got the win. Setting up the divisional playoffs, which are going to be the Broncos and Bills, Patriots and Texans, 49ers and Seahawks, Bears and Rams. Again, I'm not fully confident in these games because I think this could go down as one of the best playoffs in years, if not ever, because these teams are so competitive. The defenses are just violent. And the 49ers, man, they are young and scrappy and they desperate with their 10th and 12th string players that they're putting on the field because of all the injuries. But hey, this is the epitome of the term next man up. San Francisco 49ers playing the Seahawks in Seattle, which they were 10 points away from making that game in Santa Clara. But I'm telling you right now, I do believe that the Seahawks are now at a slight disadvantage. Because I just heard earlier today, well, actually yesterday, because it's now the 16th of January, after midnight. And what I heard was Sam Darnold, the quarterback for the Seahawks, has some sort of oblique injury, and he's questionable. If he can't play, or the oblique issue, which of course is going to cause him an issue trying to throw the ball and move around, and he turns into the pumpkin again, and instead of the carriage that he's been, taking these guys all the way to the number 1 seed, it could go bad for the Seahawks, and it could go bad for them quickly. Because it's one thing to have a good stout defense, but it's another thing to not be able to score any points. Because your offense isn't working right. So, my confidence was already with the 49ers, and I was saying San Francisco 20-17. If Sam Darnold can't play, well, that 20 might still stay in place, but that 17 might go down to 10. It's possible. Speaking of possible, the Bears and the Rams, I think this is going to be the highest scoring game of the playoffs. The Rams were already involved in one that had a bunch of points, and so were the Bears. Now, if you looked at last week, the wild card round, if the Bears were to have played the Rams and scored the same amount of points that if the Bears scored the same amount of points that they scored against the Packers, and the Rams scored the same amount of points that they scored against the Panthers, the Rams would have won. And it would have been the same score that the Rams beat the Panthers with, 34-31. Which makes me believe that in Soldier Field, I think that it's going to be the highest scoring game of the playoffs, because I think that as good as the defenses are in Seattle, in Houston, New England, Denver, and Buffalo, they're going to be able to keep the score down a little bit. But I think the offenses of the Bears, if they run the ball like they can, and if the Rams throw the ball like they want to, that thing could get out of hand quick. We might see 70 points scored in that game, and my theory is we will. I'm thinking 38, 35, and I think that the Bears are going to pull it off. Patriots, Texans, I think that the Patriots have learned their lesson, and they're going to want to put a few more points up. And they're going to be able to, even though the Texans have way better defense than San Diego does. Oh, not San Diego. Los Angeles, excuse me. The Chargers. But I'm just not seeing C.J. Stroud as the guy who's going to be able to keep it together. I think he lost. He had 5 potential errors. I think it was he just couldn't even accept the center exchange. He fumbled it a bunch of times, man. You can't do that in the playoffs. Deer in headlights, you're just going to get run over. And I honestly believe, as good as the defense is in Houston, you're not going to be able to overcome that kind of crazy against Drake May. You're just not. I think that they're going to fight, but then the moment is going to get too big. And I think the Texans are going to fold. I'm telling you, I think it's going to be 28-20. New England is going to advance to the AFC Championship. Bills and Broncos. Everybody loves Josh Allen. Big guy. Moves around. But I have this, like, there's just sometimes, no matter how good you are, you just can't quite do it. And it happens in all sports. It happens in all sports. There are guys who fought like crazy. Like in the NBA, you have John Stockton, and Karl Malone, and Charles Barkley, who did not win. NFL, you got Dan Marino and Warren Moon, and I'm going to go ahead and say it, Jim Kelly, who did not win the Super Bowl. And he's probably the most relevant here. I don't know. Josh Allen still probably got 10 years left in the NFL to play. Based on the rules and his health, he's already got an MVP. But I don't know if he's going to be a guy who isn't going to have a legendary career, but the only ring he has on his finger is his wedding ring. I'm thinking that that may be the way he goes out. And the worst part about that is, this is probably his best year to do it. Doesn't have to worry about Joe Burrow. Doesn't have to worry about Lamar Jackson. Doesn't have to worry about Patrick Mahomes, the biggest thorns in his side. And he beat one of the guys that some people thought were going to be one, Trevor Lawrence. He's got Bo Nix. And I think that Bo knows how to beat Josh Allen. And I'm going close game, because both of those defenses are pretty stout. I believe we're going to see Denver in Mile High beat the Buffalo Bills 30-24. It's just what I feel. AFC Championship game will be in Denver. Excuse me. NFC Championship game will be in Chicago. One last time, 49ers over Seahawks, 20-17. Bears over Rams, 38-35. NFC Championship, 49ers and Bears. AFC Championship games. Patriots will beat the Texans 28-20, and Broncos will beat the Bills 30-24. AFC Championship game will be the Broncos hosting the Patriots. That's where we will stop for now and go, and we'll see how it works out. And hopefully, I get a few more wins under my belt, especially Seattle and San Francisco. Now it's time to get ready to start to put the wraps on the show. You can always find me on Instagram at, of course, Philip Henderson 5101. Much like on Instagram, you can find Zenith Transport LLC at Zenith Transport LLC. Go ahead, take a look, see if there's something that he can do for you. Patrick has got, like I said earlier, he will shuttle you to train stations in Trenton and 30th Street Station in Philadelphia. He will also get you to the Philadelphia Airport and the Trenton Mercer Airport if you need. Once again, my friend Patrick Houston's Zenith Transport LLC. Check it out. The LIP Facebook page. Join us. Join our group. Be one of us. Join us. There's always room for one more. Of course, I need you to like and subscribe to at Phil the Lip, this YouTube channel where the show is on. Check out all my content that I have on there as well. But now it is time for the words of wisdom. The words of wisdom would have to be, very simply, a way that you need to notice that some of the people around you may appear. Yep. Think about this. There are people that you can see that are walking around you every day, and you may not realize it, but the fact is, some of these people that are around you can resemble this remark, and you'll notice it. You're as strong as a brick wall that gets knocked down by a feather. You're as strong as a brick wall that gets knocked down by a feather. There's people who appear strong that you're going to run into, but truthfully, they're not as strong as they appear. And as a result of that, there's two ways to handle that situation. Number one, if there's somebody who you know and you like and you respect, you need to try to help them out, because they're not as strong as you may think they are. But they don't want you to know it. That's why they have that brick wall. And they will just seem like they're powerful, but really, they're not. And then, of course, there's people who are against you, who look like they're strong. But then when you challenge them, you'll notice that they'll fall down. You need to be able to discern the difference between the two types of people. Help the ones that are strong that you need to help, and those, or help the ones that are appearing to be strong, who are friends of yours, and those who are trying to take you down, who are weak. Just remember, you're just going to knock them down like a feather, with a feather. On that note, my name is Phil, and you've listened to The Lip. Time to get a little bit more Dr. Pepper in me.